As you move through your magical campaign, there's going to be moments where you need to problem solve, where you need to optimize. And if you're at one of those points now, then this video might be for you. I'm in Santiago for one of those obnoxious 27-hour gaps between one flight and the next flight, coming back from Paraguay on my way to Australia. And my first thought, wandering around the city, is it's very clean. Now, it's very clean by comparison. Yesterday, literally, there were, and I will not hear a bad word against Asuncion, hot garbage rivers running down the main streets. So anywhere's going to look clean afterwards. But as I'm walking around these streets and lovely parks, what comes to mind is something I first heard from Catherine Austin Fitts. God does not bless a mess. So if you don't know, a bunch of us are doing one sigil a day, every day, for 2024. And I want to talk about God does not bless a mess in this context. Now, generally, I love magical, spiritual, whatever, advice that will improve your life, even in the, well, let's say, vanishing unlikely chance that materialism is true. God does not bless a mess has almost a better, but still whiff of Jordan Peterson's tidy your room, right? Like, even if God doesn't exist, we know what is meant by God does not bless a mess. If you are in a situation that needs divine assistance and your life is in shambles, or that category of your life is in shambles, then cleaning up one way or the other that mess will only improve things. And of course, we're talking about Sigil Magick in this video, but it applies to any practical enchantment. When you're at one of those points when you are troubleshooting why results haven't showed up, always, always, always start with the level of materialism, the tidy your room level of God does not bless a mess. Are you going to job interviews with the McDonald's stain on your trousers? When you're dating, are your images blurry and kinda police reporty on Tinder? When you're at a black tie event for work, are you actually in black tie or are you in a tuxedo t-shirt? And if so, where did you buy it? Because I would like one. The first part of this is obvious, right? Like, probably an area of practical enchantment is going to be a bit of a mess anyway, right? Like, you're not going to be enchanting for new romantic relationships if you already have sufficient romantic relationships in your life. It is an invitation, nevertheless, to pause and go, okay, cool. I'm going to chaos magic belief shift into materialism and find out what I can do at the level of tidy your room, at the level of cleaning up this mess, to see how I can move the needle, right? Because another way, which is going to come up later in this video, is to say, instead of tidying your room, bring some coherence to a situation. And that can and must always include the physical. Now, the second point is why rearranging things or moving things in the physical has outsized effects if they're done with intention. This has long haunted me. Star.Ships, my first book, is largely about this. It's what and why do we lay out, do our ancestors lay out stones to map the heavens, and what does that do? Because we can actually observe energetic effects, consciousness effects, and so on by taking rocks from over there and putting them here in a certain arrangement, right? Now, this is one of those spicy takes that I can really only prove by recourse to the sort of history that only magicians do. But things like feng shui are Neolithic. Now, obviously they're not, but they are a survival of that same idea of rearranging things in the physical to improve energetic flow into Chinese civilization, into historic Chinese civilization. But if you actually look at Neolithic archaeology in what is now China, you will see shaped hills and valleys and so on. You see the, dare I say, the beginnings of something like feng shui. Translating this to your life and the lack of mess blessing is, honestly, tidying your room, returning to it, is very, very useful on the level of the physical. But you know that something else happens when you bring that level of coherence and allow for flow to return to a situation, be it a bedroom or a workplace or a fitness regime, whatever it happens to be. So point 2 is messes impede flow. The question or the reframe of your challenge or your stuck point is, okay, How do I bring flow back to this? Where am I impeding flow? And you actually don't even need to know, right? Because the point 3 is thinking with. It's the animist notion that thinking is not something that happens in our heads, or at least not exclusively. It happens performatively and in conjunction with everything else that's going on in and around you. So to finally get to that storeroom, or to finally organize all your bills and all your obligations and all that personal finance paperwork, as you sit down to do, it's not pleasant, but if you want that God blessing, you got to address the mess. Every single time without fail, you will have new ideas, new perspectives will leap up from the unconscious, from the imaginal, largely in response to prayers, to sigils, and so on, that you would not have got. And it'll be the insight you need to take the next step. So point 3 is, don't think with a mess. Think with a tidy room. Think with coherence. Point 4, hopefully, brings you back from the brink of OCD. When we hear God does not bless a mess and subtext it with a ironic tidy your room, I don't want you to activate your OCD. I don't want you, every time you need a new inspiration for a creative project, to bleach the underside of your refrigerator. When we talk about a mess, we're talking about energetic flow, and the opposite of mess, this is the actual point 4, the opposite of mess is coherence. It's not tidiness. When we're looking at how we bring insight and blessings and unblockings to magical campaigns, the opposite of mess is coherence. The next point is start anywhere. I've been in some very low, everything's going wrong moments in my life, particularly when I first moved to London. Just as the financial crisis happened, we were running out of money, we didn't have anywhere to live, we didn't have a job. I was so depressed I couldn't work my magic, which is usually how I can tell when I get depressed, to be honest, like the spirit world switches off. If you're in one of those moments, start anywhere. That really is the tidy room advice. But if you are in multiple hot messes, relationship stuff, family stuff, work stuff, pick something and start anywhere. Because what you'll do is bring in that thinking that we just mentioned, that thinking with, that turn towards coherence, and having coherence turn towards you. You will also start to bring energetic flow backing up that process, and from there have it ripple out, probably better to say rhizome out from there. So if you hear God does not bless a mess, and your first thought is like, he couldn't choose which one even if he wanted to, then start anywhere. And you know what, if you're doing Sigil a day and you can start whenever you want, you didn't have to start January 1, you've got plenty of swings at the bat to start anywhere, right? Like you reset your start clock every single day. So that's like a bonus point in between start anywhere and the next point. Preparedness is next to godliness. And I'll be honest, I modified this from an Alex Hormozy podcast that I listened to on the plane coming into Santiago last night. In that podcast, he says the will to prepare is more important than the will to succeed. And in a number of the courses, the Wealth Magic course, the foundations and so on, we have looked at magical and manifestation targets around success, around, oh, I want to be CEO. I'm manifesting being CEO. The thing is, everyone does that. Now, it's essential, but it's not a differentiator, and it doesn't move the needle. Something that Alex Hormozy says in his podcast is a quote from the English comedian Jimmy Carr, which I'm going to paraphrase because I can't quite remember it. He says, lots of people want my life. They don't want to do what I had to do to get it. So this is the difference between the will to prepare and the will to succeed. Everyone has the will to succeed. Not enough people have the will to prepare. And if you look at whatever mess-based situation you are desirous of God's blessing upon, what would you say 3 times out of 4? You probably could have brought more preparation to the situation. Now, there actually are diminishing returns in preparation, but most of the time people come in underprepared rather than overprepared. Not just that, but if you are at a stuck point in your magical campaigns, there's 2 questions in this point. How is your will to prepare versus your will to succeed? Have you just ensigiled to be CMO? and not in Sigil for affordable online classes, vocational training, improved healthy body to be able to do extra workloads, all that kind of stuff. If you set your frame at the right place in potential reality so that your magic can actually shift it. That's the first one, will to prepare. And the second one is literally, it's literally the preparation part of it. Like, have you, whatever the situation happens to be, romance, job hunting, whatever, with God watching, because, you know, blessing the mess, have you done enough preparation? And you don't have to tell me, but you have to answer to yourself. And the final point is almost the preceding point said magically. Arrange the conditions of reality before you actually need them. So this is almost the Sun Tzu, art of war, right? So you win a battle before battle is joined. This is what doing the preparedness audit looks like when you turn that into targets, particularly for those prestige goals like soulmate, life mate, you know, the next wife, what have you, particularly for those, or dream jobs even, powerful outcomes that ultimately happen in sacred time. So many of you who've achieved those kind of results will look back over the things that you actually did with your magic and go, well, where and how did this help? Because it showed up exactly when it was supposed to, like a Middle-earth wizard. And that is a question that we can probably never answer down here. Like the relationship between the intentionality and use of magic and the powerful results arriving in sacred time is above our pay grade down here. It's a higher dimensional understanding. But there are nevertheless things we can do, we lesser mortals, with our enchantments while we are down here. Arrange the conditions of reality, because that's the thing that you can do that if you hadn't done in the past would not have achieved the result that showed up in sacred time. When it comes to romantic relationships, these are obvious. This is obviously working on yourself physically, psychologically, and interpersonally, and being happy with yourself, all those kind of things. We all know that. Same thing with the dream job stuff. Whatever it happens to be, arrange the conditions of reality so that the battle is won before battle is joined. This is the conclusion. This is the conclusion of all of it. When you look at God does not bless a mess and respond to that physically and magically, what you are at least doing is improving the soil to maximize the likelihood that the reality you wish to manifest can actually grow. To move from mess into coherence is to step into that hermetic, co-creative capacity. You perceive the mess. You understand God is not going to bless the mess. Your part, what is yours to do, is to bring as much coherence to what was once messy, and the other part, the co-creative part, which is God, that blessing is what comes next. And if, I'll leave you with one lucky last gem of wisdom, if over the course of this video you have had in the back of your head exactly the right kind of mess, the exact thing in your life that you don't want to look at, thinking, oh, I'll start with a smaller mess. And you know what? To some extent, that's fine, but I'm going to leave you with one last point, one last little gem of wisdom that I learned from Catherine Austin Fitz to circle back to the beginning of the video. If you can face it, God can fix it.